it out there. Got my fall cup now out. Got the little pumpkin cup that I bought from last year. Want to buy another one when I get a chance, whenever I can drive. You know. Uh, oh, by the way, Mr. Meany is back. He says good morning. Yeah, he appeared. The last I said, oh boy, here he comes. But I had, what is it? Recently had some cinnamon rolls. I had like a cinnamon roll kind of thing, and that had sugar in it, and that wasn't a good idea. Mm-mm, definitely not. But got 2 more weeks exactly before I have to go back to work. 2 more weeks. So I better take all the time I can to make the best of this recovery. What was it? Like I don't know. The other day I don't know, my wound, well, the surgical site. It's been like um, having like a wet, sweaty leakage or something on it. It's not like where it's like a thick pus coming out, but it's like almost like when you touch the area, it's like little liquid very slowly coming out. It's not a lot, and it's weird. For a while, it was coming out clear, and it would leak, and sweat was coming out of it. And then one day I woke up and there was sweat there, and it felt a little wet. I said, "Oh my goodness." And it had a weird odor to it. So I just went and showered. I said, okay, I hope I'm not getting an infection. I start worrying about those things. So I don't need to have no infection. I don't need no more other issues before I go back to work. So today, it's just been very itchy. Even around my whole abdomen where I had the surgery, it's just itchiness. Feels like I have chicken pox. I mean, I wouldn't say it's bad, but close to it. And then it goes away. It's so weird. Like it'll go through a moment of just straight itchiness. My stomach starts itching everywhere. Inside of the wound, it feels like a slight burning, itchy sensation right now. And I'm like, oh, and I'm developing these little like red bumps around my abdomen. I don't know if it's just an allergic reaction to something or what, but it's itchy and it really, really is tormenting around the surgical site. Oh. So today I was itching, then it stopped a little bit, and I looked up online. I think they said that's kind of like your nerves connecting again or something like that in the area where you were cut. But I'm like, oh my goodness, I just hope that this leak or whatever is going on there is not anything serious. I start worrying about having to, I don't want to have to take antibiotics. The last time I took antibiotics, mm-mm, mm, my stomach got messed up. Um, I took, I think it was Cipro for a cyst, and it messed up my abdomen for 2 months. Like my stomach, I was having like almost like I was having incontinence for 2 months, and it was burning when it came out. Ooh, it was not fun. So it took like 2 months for that to clear up. I never again. I don't want to do Cipro ever again. That was traumatizing to me. And before that time, I did take antibiotics for my skin, and I was on that for years, and that messed up my stomach real bad because antibiotics, it kills off your gut flora, and so that's what happened to me pretty much. It took those antibiotics, and it messed up my stomach, and it was like I was severely constipated for years. I'm now just got my body back on track over the past 2 years. Somewhat like it's like I would say every 1 to 2 days I'm at least moving something in my stomach. Before that, it was bad, and the Cipro did the complete opposite. It was just incontinence. Like like I was like an old lady. I started almost thinking about buying diapers at one point. I was like, we can buy some diapers. that stuff just kept coming out. It was burning my behind, and I just said, "Oh no, I can't, I can't have this." I was like, "I can't do this no more." I stopped the Cypher treatment probably. I'm gonna say on the seventh day, and I think I was supposed to do it for like 10 days. I just couldn't do it no more because in that first beginning stages, ooh, that stool when it comes out, the loose stools, is burning. And it burnt like that for a while after that. And I was having incontinence. I just kept going. I said, I can't control my bowels. What if I can never get rid of this problem? I was like, when is this ever going to go away? And it continued for like 2 months. And it was embarrassing. I mean, every single time I was like, oh, I should wear something underneath, or, what if I have incontinence. Speaking of that, I could tell you guys a similar experience. I'm sure women deal with this women deal with this here, some women. But our bodies as women, it goes through different stages in our lifetime. Like when I would say when I was 18, I started working at Burger King, and I got my little job and I was making some money, last year in high school. And I remember every time I would get my menstrual cycle, I would go through incontinence. Now, I didn't take any antibiotics or anything then. I don't think. I highly doubt it. I think I was off of antibiotics. Wasn't taking nothing. It was just anytime I got my menstrual, I would end up having incontinence. When I was 18 years old, I remember that. It was so tormenting. I went to work and I felt stuff coming. Like I didn't even know I was going until I started smelling myself. I said, what's going on? I went to the bathroom, didn't even know something came out of me. That was embarrassing. I was like, oh my gosh. And it kept happening all the time. Like anytime I would get like it would be around my menstrual and I would get sudden nervousness or anxiety and it just start happening. And it went on for like a good while. And then after a year or so, I would say after I stopped having that during my menstrual, I don't know why. It's like it's weird. Our bodies are weird. This stuff you will only understand if you're a woman. If you're a man, I think you're not going to understand this. How we go through different phases. Like you go through a phase where okay, you get these severe cramps for a while. And then I don't know, you don't get cramps anymore. Now you're getting emotional problems and you're crying and sad before your period. Then after that, you go through a stage where, okay, you're having incontinence issues. You go through another stage where your chest, your breast is sore, is swollen. And, you go through another stage where, it's like different kind of variety of symptoms. And some of them stay with you for a while and then they go away. Like I could tell you one of the symptoms I haven't had in a long time is cramping. I don't get as much cramping like that during PMSing. I get maybe a pressure, but I don't get cramping that much anymore. The breakouts don't seem to ever go away. That's always stuck with me always. It gets worse during menstrual. That never changes. Some things just don't ever go away. Sensitivity of the skin, back pains. I haven't had that in a while. I had a whole body cramp one time. It was a one-time rare occasion where I was on my menstrual and a whole big body cramp where it went from my head all the way down to my body and I fell to the ground. My nephews were here at the time and they were staying the night. And this was going back a couple of years ago. I just fell to the ground. It was so bad. It felt like I can't explain. I don't know if it just felt like a painful vibration that went through your body all at once and shocked you, and like electric shock all throughout your body at once. And I fell to the ground. That's how bad it was. I was like, oh! I fell to the ground. My nephews were like, they were worried, like, what's going on? I wasn't going to tell them that I was, I said, oh my God. And it was only that one time. I never had it again. It's just weird. The woman's body it's weird. Like sometimes we just have some really strange symptoms and stuff. Or we have this feeling of hopelessness. Like we'll go through a moment where, we'll be just thinking like in space, and we just feel like a hopelessness, like, like I just don't feel like being here anymore, kind of feel. And it's just a sudden feel. You'll be happy having a good time, and out of nowhere, your hormones make you feel like you don't feel like being here. I feel hopeless. I just don't feel like being here. I just feel like everything's irritating me. And then I know where you get a sudden. I could say that women, we get bipolar. There you go. We get very bipolar, I think, around our menstrual cycles. And heck, and I'm sure you get bipolar when you're pregnant too. I'm sure, and afterwards. But it's like that. It's weird. It's so weird. Um, sometimes some women get a sudden glimpse of horniness, like where they just suddenly get horny out of nowhere, and then it goes away for a while. Then they like me, I have numbness of the hands one time. It was so weird. I was at work at the time, and now I don't know what was wrong with me. That day, I mean, I don't get symptoms like that, but I got a sudden glimpse of that one time. That was crazy. I was about to get I just knew that was coming that day. And I was working, and something happened where someone said something to me, and it was just one thing, and it irritated me. And I just started going I started shaking, and I had a sudden anger, like just like it felt like a sudden anger. My hands started shaking. It was becoming numb. And I thought at first I was getting a virus, like I was sick, because I was like, why am I feeling this way? But then I started realizing it was my period. I said, uh-oh. You could tell when it's coming. You feel like a pressure down there. You're like, oh boy. And it's just something they said just irritated me. And it just like I started getting very like angry. But it's anger that made me feel like I wanted to throw something at them. Like really just take some, just going, and I just got up real fast from my chair and ran to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom and um, you know, pulled down the undies and saw like, oh yep, here it's why. And I think I prayed that day. If I'm not mistaken, I thought I prayed that day when I felt that, because I was feeling angry. I don't know, but I know there are some people, like I overheard this one time, that sometimes when you're going through those episodes, like you're going through hormonal fluctuations, that's a time where the devil could take advantage of you spiritually. I mean, I believe that to be true. You know what I mean? Like, I know the one guy, there was a man that's saying about his wife. I don't know if she was having hormonal issues, and, she was feeling, out of it. And he said that, he would pray or something like that for her. Because sometimes, the devil does come around to tempt you and to cause trouble. He's like, oh, she's vulnerable. She's going through emotions right now. Let me step in. This is the best time to make her really do something stupid, piss her off. It flies around you. So I was praying, and I did feel better later on after that, but it's just weird. You know what I mean? The woman's body and our way our makeup is very, very strange. Same thing after we have a baby. They say women that go through postpartum. I don't ever want to go through that. That's one of my biggest fears about having a baby is going through that. It's very important to have some kind of support. A support team. They say that it takes a village to raise a child. It's very true. You do really need support, especially in those beginning years, because your mind is all over the place. Your hormones are over the place. You know what I mean? I can only imagine if I feel off sometimes during my menstruals. How does a pregnant woman feel, and how does she feel after she gives birth to a baby? Must be horrible for some women. I mean, not the experience of not the idea that they have a baby. That's not horrible. The horrible part is their hormones, the fluctuations, how they feel after that. They start feeling crazy. I knew a girl, I worked with her, and she told me her story. And she said, she was saying that she gave birth to her baby in the hospital. She had one daughter at the time, She told me experience, and I didn't dare judge her because I haven't had a baby yet. So who am I to sit back and say what I'll do if I had a baby? She says to me, Candace, it is no joke postpartum depression. She's like, I'm telling you, I had the baby, and they put the baby in my hand, and something, she says, something came over her, like her emotions were drained. She looked at the baby in a sudden anger, just like how I felt, like I mentioned, when I was sitting at my desk and I just felt a sudden anger around the time I got when the period was on its way. That's how she felt, but probably 10 times, the way she explained it was like 10 times worse. So I can kind of now relate now back to what she was saying, like in some sort of way. But she said it was a sudden anger that made her angry, like she wanted to hurt someone. And the baby was in her hands and she was shaking and she was getting angry out of nowhere. Like she wanted to throw, she says, take the baby from her hands. She yelled at her father, take the baby from my hands. I'm gonna throw her. And she said that she was gonna get ready to throw the baby. She was gonna, that's how angry she was. It's just she something made her crazy at that moment. She says, Candace, is no joke. That's how I felt. I don't know what was wrong with me, what was wrong with my mind. My hormones were all over the place. It was just so sudden. She said she was happy. The baby was born. She went to go hold her. So she went to go hold her. She was so happy. She looked at her and she just got angry out of nowhere. And she's like, she said like she started feeling like, like a violent feel. She's like, Daddy, take the baby now. Take it out of my hands. She was going to throw the baby. She says, I was ready to throw the baby, Candace. I had no control of myself. And I said, oh, that sounds scary. So she scared the hell out of me telling me that. I said, she says, over time, her hormones and everything got better. And, she got, good thing she had her father and support. And that's very important. She said that, of course she had to get therapy and things like that, but she did way better after that. Her hormones started to level out. But I could kind of understand a little bit now, like what they're talking about, because when I've never had a baby, I never had a baby before. Have I been pregnant? Yes, I have been pregnant, but somewhere in my early ages, my lifetime, but I've never had a full term. Like I never went to like 2 months, I would say. Highly doubt, because I knew I was pregnant because I had a positive pregnancy test at one point. But whatever happened, I don't know, because I didn't want to see the doctor. I was young. That was, a scary moment for me. But and there was a lot behind that experience when I was younger that I can't really speak on, because if I was to go into what I believe happened, people probably wouldn't believe me. They would think I'm crazy, you know. But I would just say that I didn't get a chance to carry up to. I would say I didn't get a chance to even carry up to where I had a bump or anything. So that was good. And no, I didn't get no abortion because I don't believe in abortions. So it was just weird, but I've never had carried a baby full term. I never had given birth, to a baby. So I don't understand, I don't understand like the idea of feeling that bad with postpartum depression. But when I had that moment in the office when I was working and I had my menstrual, and that just one moment of grips, I felt so off. I said, oh, so now thinking back to her situation, I could kind of get an idea of maybe how she felt, an idea. I wouldn't say exactly how she felt because, like I said, I never had postpartum depression or had a baby before. So I don't, I don't know what that's like, but it's scary. When she said that scared me. I was traumatized. I said, oh boy, I don't know if I want to have, a baby, and stuff like that. I said, oh boy, sounds scary. At the time, I don't remember. I think I was engaged with my husband at the time. think so. I think I was engaged. Yeah. Because we got engaged back in 2010. Yeah, it definitely had to be engaged because I remember it was when our very early years. I started working at that place in around 2010, and I got engaged in 2010. So I had to been engaged just before I got had to be just before I got married when I was working with this girl. And I remember her telling me that. you know, I'm still up in the air about having babies, man. I very much am. I'm very much up in the air. Like I would like to have one, but at the same time, I'm like, it's only if it's in God's will, for me. Not just that, but the way things are going in this world. Mm-mm. You know, the cost of living has gone up. I've said this before. The cost of living has gone up. Um, it gives you a lot of mixed emotions, the way the world is going, the way the economy is, the food prices. Right now I'm looking at all these videos and everybody's saying that, now in order to really live comfortably, you have to make at least $66 an hour. I'm like, is that true? I mean, I don't know how true that is, but that's a lot of money. Nobody makes that kind of money, you know? So I'm like, that's crazy, People are struggling. There's people going into foreclosure, I heard, and people not able to buy a house. I mean, me and hubby would like to buy a house next year if the interest rates goes down. I heard the interest rates are at 7%. And I mean, my mother said that, at one point it was at 4%. I would like it to go back down to that because then next year would be the best time to move. Because I'm going to be 36 this October, and I'm getting older. I'll be 40 in 4 years from now. I would like to have a house or something set. You know, and if it's in God's will, then I'll have a baby before I turn 40. Am I scared? Hell yeah, I'm scared. I'm very frightened about having a baby. But at the same time, I feel bad for my mother-in-law. And I'm like, my niece, she needs a cousin. So I'm like, oh gosh, I'm stuck in the middle. And I always think about the idea, like, about all the things that comes along with motherhood and the postpartum depressions and the heartaches and the pains and it's a lot. Having to raise a baby is a lot of work. You're raising another life. You're responsible for them. And my biggest thing is if I have a child, I want to raise the child in the Lord. So I don't want to bring a child in this world if I ain't raising them in the Lord. And that's, of course I'm in the Lord. So I want my child to be in the Lord. And, I don't want to set them up for failure or teach them the wrong things. I want them to let them know, like, you're here because your purpose is to serve the Lord, and, tell them about Christ from a very young age, because that's what your purpose. That's why you're here, to serve him. So otherwise, I don't want to bring a kid into the world just because, and I want to love that child and I want to raise them in love and do the best I can. But I'm gonna be praying to God, man. If it's his will and I have a baby, I'm like, God, please give me strength. Oh God. And I know I'll be a good mom, but it's just the worries and the fears that comes along with it and all the stuff that's going on in this world right now. You can't sit here and tell me this is the best time to raise kids. It is not. And they're talking about the birth crisis. Oh man, we're going through a birth crisis. Oh, no one's having babies. Well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think people want to do when we're in the state that we're in right now? You think they're going to be in a rush to have babies? That ain't going to happen. They're like, oh, what we'll do is we can start giving people incentives. Like they're talking about paying, if you have a baby, they're going to pay you $5,000. I'm like, $5,000 is not even enough to cover the damn hospital bill. People's bills come up to like $30,000 after they have kids. Do you think that's gonna encourage a person to have a baby? I mean, if you're paying them $5,000 a month, maybe, You pay a girl $5,000 a month for a good couple of years. They may have a couple of kids and say, okay, fine, I'll have a kid. But they're not going to do that just for one-time pay. Hell no. That's not enough to cover all the stuff that they're doing right now with the expenses and the cost of living right now. No one's going to give in to that. Then he's talking about freezing eggs, doing IVF. I don't believe in that. I'm strongly against, IVFs and test tube babies. I don't believe in that. I believe that, only by, missionary, having sex is with your, with a person. That's the way that a child should come into the world. And if it's God's will, it happen. I don't believe in all this technology stuff. So now they're talking about freezing people's eggs and we need to bring more babies into the world and stuff. And I'm like, you think they care about the population? They don't care about that. When they see a person, you know what they care about? They care about money. That's what they're caring about. They're like, oh, we don't have enough people to replace the people that are dying. How are we going to have Social Security paid? How are we going to have all these things paid? So when they see a baby, you know what they see? A dollar bill sign above their head. That's what they see. That's the only reason why they want us to have babies. They don't care about us. They just want us to have kids because they see that dollar bill sign sitting above their head. That's about it. They got their own agenda, and it's not because they care about how many babies are in the world. And if you really think about it, it's billions of people in this world, so we're really overpopulated, if anything. So I don't know, but if they think that that's pushing people to have kids, it's not. Now I'm not going to lie. If the cost of living was down right now, and taxes were down and food prices were down, making a decent, we can work 40 hours, one person a week. I think it would encourage me to have a kid. I think it would encourage me to not feel so like, in the middle, like having mixed emotions about it. I think as scared as I am to have a kid, I would be like, I guess I'll give it a go right now. But the way things are going doesn't really encourage me much more to say, let me give it a try right now. Like, I don't know. And even if I did give it a try, like I said, if it ain't God's will, it won't happen. It just won't happen. I thought about it yesterday. I was cooking yesterday. I was cooking some breakfast and I got the house clean. This house is more clean than ever because, I've been getting OCD with everything. I had my husband lift up the bed, drove him crazy the other day. Had him lifting up both mattresses, the bottom and top. I said, Matthew, lift it up now, lift it up. Because I can't lift anything up because, I'm still, I'm not allowed to lift anything still, although I can move around. I'm 6 weeks post-surgery. And, because at the bottom part of that bed, there's a cover that was on there and it looked like there was some stains on it. It was making me itch. I said, man, take it off now. Take it off. I started ripping it off and I didn't even touch it. I took the bag. I started touching the cloth that's on the bottom part with the bag. My husband, just give it to me. I was driving him crazy. I was going so nuts. I was cleaning the house. Now the next thing I want to do is shampoo, carpet my rug that I have over here. I bought it. And, I was thinking yesterday, this house is more clean than ever because I haven't been working, because I won't go back until 2 weeks. So I'm like, I would make a pretty good darn housewife. I really would. And I honestly wouldn't mind it. As long as I could work 2 or 3 days a week, because I do like to work and earn my own money. It's just something I like to do. But I wouldn't mind being a housewife and staying home. But you know what? I can't do that because the way things are, nobody pays you enough for one person to stay home. They don't pay you enough for you to stay home and be a housewife. I had dinner on by by 6 o'clock, dinner was ready. My husband came home and said, oh, dinner's ready early. But when I work, dinner's not ready early because I have to work, but I wouldn't mind it if, and just work 2-3 days a week. Then I can have a couple of babies. Then I think I would be like, okay, if it's God's will, it'll happen and I'll give it a try, but this is my cleaner thing. This is my shampoo carpet thing that I'm going to be looking at today. It's Turbo Clean Bissell Pet XL upright carpet cleaner. Cause this rug is driving me crazy. My husband has been rubbing his dirty feet on his rug for a while now, and it's just driving me all crazy. I'm like, I got to keep this place clean. I can't deal with it, you know, anymore. I really can't. But yeah, just I thought about that. So I would make a good darn housewife, and I wouldn't mind it. You know, back in the days, it only took one person to work, and guess what? You had enough money to make it. It was sufficient enough to cover you and your wife and your family. Even if you were broke after that, you still at least were able to pay your bills. Now, two people working 40 hours a week is not enough. You still go broke. My sister had her third baby. She's done. And she had her tubes tied. And she was mentioning to me, like, where do you have time to raise your children? She's got to work during the day. The other one works at night, and they're switching lanes. Where's the family time? You know, where's the family time? And it's like, it's very hard. And, like on the weekends, they do as much as they can together, but it is very difficult. And I help her out as much as I can. I'm going to be probably going over there this weekend to help out, because by then I should be able to drive after Friday, because it'll be 6 weeks and they'll give me the clearance. I'm sure I'm not feeling like extreme pain. It's just the itchiness and that burning sensation in my wound. So, I help them out as much as I can. But again, like she's like, who wants to do all that? Have more babies when you can't even be home to raise them, And then forget it. Daycare is expensive now. One of her teachers that she had to end up leaving her job because daycare ain't supporting anything anymore. She's like, oh my gosh, what are you trying to do? Make women stay home? So I ain't got nobody to take care of me. And even if she did have a husband, the husband wouldn't be able to work alone. He would need her help. It's too expensive now. My sister, she just wants to work just to save up enough money to get herself a house. And then after that, she's going to go back down to 3 days a week, and they're just going to have to wing it out. And I told her, I said, well, if I find a job that allows me to work 3 to 4 days a week, a certain set amount of hours that pays decent, I can actually help her out a lot more with the baby so she can work 3 or 4 days a week, continuously. We have like a set schedule. But it's hard. It's rough out there. I mean, they think that, oh, it's easy. Just pop up a baby. Just get it done. Get it over with. No, we're not. Nobody's just going to go ahead and do that right now. Not in the current state of things. I think you'd be a fool to think that way, That gets me going with the whole thing about having children and marriage, because a lot of people try to say that, God tells you to be fruitful and multiply. So they'll try to say that, if you don't have children and get married, you're not doing what God had put into you as to your purpose. You're supposed to get married, have children. You're sinning. You're not doing what God told you to do. And it's like, no, that's not. When he said be fruitful and multiply, it wasn't to say for everybody. It was just a command, as in the sense of what he put, the laws and orders he put. The commandments he put into human nature, in our nature in general, to be fruitful and multiply. He ain't necessarily saying, oh, if everyone don't have kids, if you're not having babies like everyone else, you're sinning. That's not true, because I got a scripture that could show you differently. Where's that tab at? A lot of them try to say, oh yeah, you women, you're supposed to be raising them to be housewives and wives and this and this and this and that. And I'm like, not necessarily, you're supposed to raise them to be independent in the Lord. And if it's in their will and they want to have sex and have children, they need to get married. Yes, that's how you need to teach them. If you're planning on marrying and stuff and having children, you have to do it in the Lord, in the confines of marriage. That's how you should raise them. But at the end of the day, you have to respect their free will choice. So they get older and they choose not to do that, then there's nothing you can do, Um, um, but people teach that. They'll say, "Oh yeah, you need to get married, have kids," and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you teach people that they have to do that, and that's God's purpose for you, and that's what you're here for as a woman. And if you don't have kids, you're worthless, and you don't have no purpose. Or if you don't find a wife and get married and have kids, you got no purpose as a man. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to continue the family line. No, that's not for everybody. That's not for everyone. Marriage is not for everybody, and having children is not for everybody. And no, it's not a sin if you choose to live your life solo. Oh, you're gonna be miserable. Well, if you don't have kids and get married, you're gonna be lonely and miserable. I'm gonna tell you two things. First of all, there are a lot of people in this world that are very content with living by themselves. They enjoy their own company. I'm one of them. I mean, if I wasn't married, I enjoy my company. You know, they're very introverted, and they don't look to another person to find happiness. First of all, your happiness comes from the Lord, and your purpose is in the Lord to serve Him. Loneliness, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. True loneliness, and I learned this from Cassandra Mack, true loneliness is to be without purpose. That's what it means to be lonely. Because guess what? There are people that can hang out in a room full of people and they still feel lonely in the midst of all these people. Why do they feel so lonely in the midst of 10, 15 people? So you can't say that you're going to end up lonely. There are people that have families and they still end up lonely because their kids die before them, or their kids throw them in a nursing home and they're selfish and they're like, I don't feel like taking care of you. Heck, there's people that are in a marriage and they feel lonely in their marriage because in their marriage, they don't really spend time together and they feel like they don't understand each other and they still feel like a sense of absence somewhere in their life. And if you ain't got God, you are definitely lonely. You may be around a mist of people, but you don't got true purpose when you don't have the Lord. I'll tell you, my aunt, she's a good example of somebody that just is by herself and she's happy. She's joyful. She ain't married. She ain't got kids. And she's out there living her life. She's an engineer. Has she dated before? Yeah. Has she considered marriage? Yeah, but it wasn't something that she was crazy about. It was just more like, if I find the right guy, I'll give it a chance, like that kind of thing. Like I'll give it a chance, and I'll give him a baby. I'll take a try with it. But it's not something I need to have. It's just if it's in the cards for me. But it just never happened that way. She's happy. She goes out, she travels, she goes on cruises all the time, gets free deals because she always goes on cruise ships. She travels the world. She's been in China. She's seen different things, and she's very joyful, very full of light. My aunt. She has no kids. She's like, she don't want any kids. She's like, I don't really want a kid. She's 50 something years old, going on 60. Does she regret it? No. She's like, I don't regret it. I love my life. I love the way things are. I'm just content this way. And actually, the Bible, they actually say that's a blessing to have that, to be someone that doesn't need to have kids and get married and stuff like that. That's a blessing. And we're not all meant to have the same blessings. You know what I mean? Just like a child is a blessing and gift from God, so is your soloness, So is your singleness is a blessing. If you're able to live like that, where you don't need to run to a man, woman, get married, or have kids, it's not in the cards for you, you're okay with that. That's a blessing as well. That's a gift from God too. We're all meant to have a different gift and a different walk. So, and I can pull up the scripture about that, about Paul, when he was mentioning about, if you don't marry, you do better. But yeah, so they always push that narrative on people. Like I'll be honest, marriage, it's an adventure, it's an experience. It's a blessing, but it also is a lot behind being married. It's a lot of work. You know, you're going to have your ups and downs. You're not going to have a perfect marriage. You know, me and my husband, our days, we were enemies, and there's days that we could be best friends. And the romance dies and goes out the door. You can try to recreate it, but it'll never be the same as it was the first time. And that's just the truth. So that's why a lot of people end up cheating, because they don't have that spark anymore. And they think that, oh, this is the solution to the problem. But guess what? They go with that next person. That once they get tired of them, they're ready to go back. They're like, oh, I'm tired. It's boring now, the sex. And, you know, I don't feel like staying in this relationship no more. And what they did was, not only did they use that person, they broke someone else's heart. You know, they discarded someone like nothing and used them because of their own selfishness, because of their own selfish needs. I want to feel loved again. And then they realize this is not love. This is lust. This is just fake love here. Romance ain't real love. That's just the beginning stages of a relationship. Love, true love, is sacrificial. That's when all the love goes out the door and you got to really deal with the real thing, you know? You know, when your husband gets old and he no longer can get up anymore, are you going to love him still? Or are you going to go and leave him for your lustful desires? You know, when your wife goes through breast cancer and she loses her breast, or she goes old and prune and she's dried down and she can no longer operate no more, are you going to love her still? Or are you going to go away and find another woman for your lustful desires? And then when you're done with her, you're going to use her and leave her too, and then go back to your wife and use her. These are things when your spouse gets ill and they got stuff going on in their life, are you going to be there for them, or are you going to worry about your Winky down there? Okay. Or your pudding down there. Okay. Which one is it? You know, but people don't think about that. When they take those vows, a lot of people are just in their feelings and they don't really think deep about those marriage vows, how deep it is, that it's sacrificial and it's a true covenant under God. And you're talking about for better or for worse, for sickness or health, for rich or poor. A lot of them just say things that they may not, but they don't always mean it. Because they get into marriage and they're all lovey-dovey, not expecting what's ahead of the game, what true love really means. Putting up with the thick and thin with somebody. They don't understand that yet. They're just screwing in bed in lust. They're just starting to learn each other, moving in with each other. Are you ready to see the changes that you're going to see in each other when you guys live with each other for so long? Because people do change. Are you going to still love each other? Are you going to stick together? Because that's real love. Love is not feelings. Love can resort to good feelings, but love ain't feelings. Love is an action. It's sacrificial. It's putting somebody's needs on the level of yours or above you sometimes, a lot of times. And marriage is not always going to be 50-50. They say, oh, yeah, marriage is 50-50. But it isn't always 50-50. Because the truth is we're not perfect. So there's always something we're lacking in. Sometimes it'll be, when your husband loses his job, he can no longer support you because he fell ill or he has something mentally going on with him. Are you going to be there to pick up the other half? Are you going to be able to pick up the slack and love him still? See, these are things that people don't think about. And then we jump into a marriage and we think like, oh, it's just all fun and games, lovey-dovey, hoo-hoo. And then they put on a fake facade on Facebook about how much they love my husband and wife, but behind the scenes they're sitting there fighting and arguing like cats and dogs. That's the society we live in, you know? Speaking of that, I'll tell you a funny story before I get to these scriptures here. I know one time my parents fight like crazy, you know, and they're best friends, and sometimes they bicker at each other, you know. And they were in the restaurant and they were going back and forth. It's like, me, get on my nerves. Because, you know, when you've been married with someone for so long, you're no longer like lovers. You're more like best friends, brother, sister, you know, partners in crime, you know. And so the lady comes over. She says, I can tell you guys been married for a long time. That's what the waitress says to my mom and father. And they were like, Yeah, we have been. We've been married for a long time. So the couple that's sitting over there next to them that's acting all lovey-dovey, when they looked over and heard that, then they started bickering and arguing because they were trying to get attention. Because they realized that, oh shit, that's what real love is. That is real love. That is real relationship where, have days where you're like, you got to deal with this annoying partner of mine, but at the same time, you still love them and you have their back at the end, you know? So they were like, oh, shoot, I think we're being a little too fake here. Let's start arguing. They said out of nowhere, they started bickering and arguing with each other at the end. I think that's funny. But yeah, hey, it's not for everybody. Everybody's meant to have their own walk and own gift and own experience in life and wherever God brings them to. Me, I'll tell you right now, if anything ever happened in my marriage, I ain't getting married again. No, I can't do it again. Unless it's God's will and God said, Candace, this would be best for you, but no. No. I said, I think this is good enough. This one good marriage, I'll remain widow. And and don't worry, I don't need, I'm not somebody who needs to have sex or anything. So I'm good with that. I'm a master at being celibate. There you go. So I don't need none of that. I'm like, no, I'm good. I said, there's no need for me to get married. I'll stay a celibate widow for the rest of my life. Unless, like I said, God knocked on the door, said, Candace, you really need to, I have somebody here that's good for you. And this this would be best for you to get married, Because marriage ain't no joke. Marriage is serious. It's a serious, sacred covenant and a promise. And, it is not, when it comes to your feelings and what you want, that's out the door. You're dealing is the two shall become one flesh, and now it's two people as one. My husband, although he drives me crazy, and although I drive him crazy, we love each other. Me, I'm very sacrificial with my husband. He's my baby. I want to make sure he eats healthy, he eats well, his health is on point. I get constantly worried every day about him. It's like, I want to make sure he's taken care of. And you just got a lot of worries that run through your head when they leave the door. I always watch him when he leaves to go in the car. I'm like, oh, I hope he's good and he drives safe and everything. My husband gets annoyed because I'm so overprotective sometimes. We'd be in the car and I start thinking like, he's driving too fast. Are you driving too fast, Matthew? Are you driving like this when I'm not with you? He's like, oh, Candace, I'm fine. I do anything to break my back for him, but I don't think but if I had to do this again, like something ever happened, no. It's a big responsibility in some form of ways, and if you have kids, it's going to be a big responsibility. But let me see here. I'm going to just pull up the scripture here before I go. Corinthians. There was something else I wanted to talk about, but I'll save it for another day. It's about something that I heard on the videos today. It was listening to a guy named Sam Simone, and there were some people that I guess were a little disappointed about him going to Catholicism, and there were some things he said that I was like, I don't really agree with, and and I didn't think that he had a big, he was very narrowed in some things that he was saying. And it was just something I was thinking deep about this morning, but I'll talk about it another day. But Corinthians, not to marry. I'm just going to look up this scripture here because I want to read this for people who are saying, it's a sin not to get married, have babies. That's not true. Or you need to do this. No, you don't have to do that, I'm going to read this here. I want to read this on here. I'm going to read from starting on 1 Corinthians 7, And I'm going to read the whole thing because it's pretty good. And it says here, is this NIV version? Yeah, it is. Now, for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am. But each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. Now he just says, as I am. He says, now to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So I'm going to stop there just real quick. So that's what I'm talking about. Like when I say, like, if I became a widow or anything, or let's say my husband just didn't want to be married to me anymore, I'd be pretty brokenhearted. You know, I wouldn't remarry, even if he got with somebody else. Because, you know, you're not allowed to marry anybody else unless that person commits adultery or they die. So even if he was to marry somebody else and he just says, I'm done, Candace, I don't want this, I ain't getting remarried. No, it's better to be unmarried, you know? I mean, I was young when I got married, but now being in my 30s, if I had to do that again, no. It says it's better to not marry, but they said if you can't control yourself, then it's better to marry than to burn with passion. But me, I ain't got that problem, you know? So, you know, me, like I said, I'd be good. So I wouldn't have to marry. As And it says, to the married, I give this command, not I, but the Lord. A wife must not separate from her husband. But if she does, she must remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband, and a husband must not divorce his wife. To the rest I say this, I, not the Lord. If any brother has a wife who is not a believer and she is willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer and he's willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbeliever leaves, let it be so. The brother or the sister is not bound in such circumstances. God has called us to live in peace. How do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them, just as God has called them. This is the rule I laid down in all the churches. Was a man already circumcised when he was called? He should not become uncircumcised. Was a man uncircumcised when he was called? He should not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing. Keeping God's commands is what counts. Each person should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. Were you a slave when you were called? Don't let it trouble you. Although if you can gain your freedom, do so. For the one who was a slave when called to faith in the Lord is the Lord's freed person. Similarly, the one who was free when called is Christ's slave. You were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of human beings. Brothers and sisters, each person as responsible to God should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. Now it says concerning the unmarried, Now about virgins, I have no command from the Lord, but I give a judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. Because of the present crisis, I think that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released. Are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life. And I want to spare you this. I'm going to read this again. But he says, are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life. I want to spare you this. So he's letting you know. So all this talk about people saying, oh, you need to get married and this and this and this and that, and, oh, that's a sin. And it's a pray. Oh, you got to get married. Oh, you're going to end up this. But he just told you, you're going to have a lot of trouble in this life. The King James Version says you will have many tribulations. Because it's true. Marriage is not a joke. It's a sacred covenant under God. It's serious. When you have sex, you're taking a covenant. People use sex and they abuse it, and they end up hurting each other with it, and they end up having serious consequences because they take sex for a joke, but sex is really meant for a husband and wife, a symbolic covenant, sacred act under God that symbolizes the union that's between a man and woman under God. That marriage is a symbolic way of representing God and his church, God and his people, and is a sacred covenant under God. So all those things are very sacred, and the devil has distorted it. And it's something that's serious. It's not something that, okay, you can just play around with. Say, oh, I'm married, and you're taking on an oath. Just like when a pilot takes an oath, and he's responsible for everybody in that plane. He's not allowed to leave that plane unless everybody else leaves that plane safe. Otherwise, he broke his oath. People look on the news and say, oh, that pilot got out of the ship. He needs to go to jail. You need to look at marriage the same exact way. You're taking on an oath. You're taking on responsibility. Death do you part. For sickness or for health. For rich or poor, for better or for worse. That's a strong, serious covenant. I'll get back to this phone call in a minute. That's a serious oath to take under God. That ain't no joke. And it tells you you're going to have many problems in this life. Well, we don't think about that as human beings. I was young when I got married. And I meant my oath, but it ain't easy. You don't think about those things. You're like, you got to really mean those things, because people just say one thing, but they don't always mean it in their heart. It is just, man, it's serious. So he's even warning you. He says, I want to spare you this. He says, what I mean, brothers and sisters, is that the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they do not. Those who mourn as if they did not. Those who are happy as if they were not. Those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep. Those who use the things of the world as if not engrossed in them. For this world in its present form is passing away. I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world and how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I'm saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in an undivided devotion to the Lord. If anyone is worried that he might not be acting honorably toward the virgin he is engaged to, and if his passions are too strong and he feels he ought to marry, he should do as he wants. He is not sinning. They should get married. But the man who has settled the matter in his own mind, who is under no compulsion, but has control over his own will, and who has made up his mind not to marry the virgin, this man also does the right thing. So then he who marries the virgin does right, but he who does not marry her does better. He's warning you. I just read it here. A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord. In my judgment, she is happier if she stays as she is. And I think I too have the Spirit of God. So he just told you. So all that just debunked it, all that falseness that people be saying with just this one scripture here. He told you, he said it's better for her to stay as she is. And if you marry, you have not sinned. I mean, obviously it's not a sin to get married, but you're going to have tribulation. So the person that doesn't marry actually does better. They're at peace, but that's if it's in them to be that way. You get what I'm trying to say? Because like he just said, there's different gifts everybody has. Some people, that's a gift actually for some people to actually remain solo and not be tempted to the point where they're committing sexual immorality and stuff. So, and obviously you know that, God wouldn't want you having kids outside of wedlock. So that just answers the question right here. So no, it's not, if you do good if you get married, you do better if you don't. One way or another, it's not a sin either way. And so that's what it shows here. So, that's first. If you want to read, that's 1 Corinthians 7. And that starts off from line 1 all the way down to line 40. So I wanted to share that there before I go about marriage and just putting that out there, because you get sick and tired of people always trying to make you feel like like you're doing something wrong by deciding to not live like others. And they're like, oh yeah, you're not getting married, or you don't have kids yet. You know what I mean? People always ask me, when you gonna have a baby? And it gets so annoying after a while. And I've even had somebody at my job, a patient that continuously asks me, you still haven't had a baby yet? You don't have a baby? And I said, I don't need no kids right now. I said, I got my nephews. He says, they're not the same thing. I looked at him and he says, they're not yours though. And I looked at him and I wanted to say, like, they actually are mine because they're in my life and they're my blood related nephews. They are mine. And I practically raised them. So yeah, they are mine. And maybe it's not the same experience as motherhood, but it's a different kind of good experience that I'm meant to walk. Not everybody's meant to be a mother. And if I'm not meant to be a mom, it ain't going to happen. And I'm not going to be duped out about it. It's just more of, if I have a kid, I have one. If I don't, I don't. Obviously from this scripture I read, there ain't nothing wrong with not having kids, because in the way God's structure is you have to be married to have kids. So if it was a sin to not have kids, he would have said you need to get married. Isn't that right? So, it's foolishness when people say things like that, and say, oh yeah, you're not doing things the way God commanded. No, that's the way you want to command things. That's the way you want to see stuff. But I just read you the scripture. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think I yapped on enough. It's been an hour. I still have a little bit more of this coffee left in here, but I'm going to be decorating for the fall really soon. Be putting up all my fall leaves and things. And I did away with Halloween 3 years ago. I don't celebrate the holiday no more. Had some fun times, did Sally the pumpkin and all sorts of things. I was misbehaving, but I knew that I should not have been doing that. It was wrong. And I was making excuses for all those years. And then I just say, I got to stop doing this. And I stopped celebrating that holiday. And I'm really glad. I'm glad that I did. It's not easy sometimes when, like I said before, when you see the world doing things and you feel like you're excluded. You're like, oh, I want to join in. I want to have fun too. But then you realize that there's a lot of the things of this world that's just very wicked and it's not of God, you know? And that's where I was. I was making excuses and I wanted to, be part of, the holiday spirit and blah, blah, blah. I'm not celebrating it for bad reasons. I'm just, trying to do it for traditional reasons, but that's not an excuse. So I stopped making excuses and I stopped celebrating that holiday. So we know when fall comes, I don't mind like fall leaves. What I do is I put like fall leaves, acorns. I put like sweater weather is better. I have like a football thing with like little pumpkins, but it's not like Halloween pumpkin decorations, more like, happy Thanksgiving or certain things that doesn't pertain to that holiday. Because people don't realize that that holiday is a very demonic holiday. It's the holiday of the dead. People try to do like necromancy. It's the Satanist holiday. They actually are happy when they see Christians celebrating that holiday because they do a lot of witchcraft and different things on that day. It's the day of the witches. And then you notice the next day after, I think it's November 1st, is the Day of the Dead and all that stuff. They try to make it look nice by making it seem innocent, or they'll try to put like these they'll try to say All Saints Day or something dealing with the saints, but that's just them trying to slap a label on to kind of cover up what's really behind all of it. It's really demonic. It's not a good holiday. A lot of people don't even realize there's people in, like, one putting curses on people's stuff, like their candies and things. And people that are satanic look like anybody else. They look like me, you. They're walking around looking nice, friendly. Hey, how you doing? Good night. And all behind your back, they're sitting there doing rituals. So you gotta be careful. You gotta really be careful out there. I know it sounds crazy what I'm saying, but it ain't crazy. It's really true that they really be doing that kind of stuff. And not just that, even if you are just in your own house having a Halloween party, it's still, you're celebrating something of the devil. It doesn't matter what way you want to look at it. So I just, I stopped making excuses over the years. I wanted to have fun and misbehave and make freaky pumpkins. I mean, that Sally Pumpkin, it was something, wasn't it? I mean, I was being really bad, but then I felt guilty. I said, I really shouldn't be doing this. I said, I really am not doing what God wants me to do. And this is celebrating evil. So I'll admit it. I was wrong and I should not have been doing that. And I stopped doing that 3 years ago. So we're all still growing, right? In Christ, we're still all learning and learning to put away things that are not right that we shouldn't be doing, So that's what I stick with now. Just put fall stuff, because I love fall stuff, decorations, just to keep myself active and keep myself occupied, because I am a very creative person. But I just don't want to be creative with something that's representing the dark side. But I want to get going. God bless everybody, and take care. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. I'm going to go. Bye-bye.